Thank you once again for joining, and I wish you a productive session. Thanks, Liga. And
thank you, John. And I would also like to extend a warm thank you to ALTUM, Latvia's counterpart of the 3Cs Initiative Fund, for their support of this important event. Thank you so much. It is now my pleasure to introduce the moderator of today's discussion, Ieva Racinai, who serves as Vice President of AmCham Latvia, and she's also Director of Riga Graduate School of Law. Ieva will introduce the topic, lead the discussion, and handle your questions. We invite you to use the Q&A function on Zoom webinar platform for your questions. So without further ado, I wish you all a very insightful session. Ieva, the virtual floor is all yours.
Thank you, Liga. Thank you, John, for introduction. And good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today. We have a quite distinguished panel and quite a numerous audience, as I can see. The 3Cs initiative was launched back in 2016 as a geopolitical initiative of 12 countries located between the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Sea region, including Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovenia, Croatia, and Austria. The initiative is strongly supported by the United States and other partners such as Germany and European Commission. The 3Cs initiative is aimed at fostering deeper business cooperation for the development of cross-border infrastructure projects, and identified priority areas include the energy, transport, and digital sectors. And put it simply, the initiative is looking to develop infrastructure that will be enabled connections along the north-south corridor of the European Union. And while the connections along the east-west axis are fairly well established, the north-south axis remains underdeveloped. The 3Cs region has about 30% of EU's population, and the average GDP growth over the past 5 years is 3.3%. It is estimated that region's infrastructure investment needs are more than 500 billion euros. It definitely has a huge potential for growth and attraction of investments in one of the fastest growing regions in the world. AmCham strongly supports the 3Cs initiative, and our support dates back to 2018 when we signed a joint declaration of AmChams from the countries that are part of the 3Cs region. We see many advantages, from generating interest among investors in our region to contributing to the climate goals, energy security, smart connectivity, and economic growth. Recognizing the enormous opportunities the initiative has in store for our region, we would like to undertake a proactive role in the time leading up to Riga summit this summer and raise awareness, interest, and build trust among existing and potential investors, and of course, provide the necessary information for goal of also for which is today's event. With that in mind, we are delighted to welcome a panel of 5 distinguished speakers to engage in conversation and in discussion about Latvia's vision for the upcoming summit and the US role in the initiative. We are also pleased to have representatives of the 3Cs Initiative Fund and get a real-life investee's perspective. Today, we have the honor to host Mr. Reinis Bērziņš, Chairman of the Management Board of ALTUM, State-Owned Development Finance Institution of Latvia, Ambassador Edgars Bodnars, Ambassador at Large for the 3Cs Initiative, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Latvia, Mr. Ian Brzezinski, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council's Europe Center and Brand Scowcroft Center in Strategy and Security, Mr. Ular Jākso, Founder and Partner of Digital Nation, Founder at Greenergy Data Centers, and Mr. Joe Phillips, Head of 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund, Amber Infrastructure Limited. The primary topics of today's discussion will be: can 3Cs initiative ensure faster economic growth of the region? How can 3Cs initiative strengthen security cooperation? And what are the priorities and criteria for 3Cs initiative funding? And today we will hear introductory statements from our guest speakers, and then we will kick off with a discussion. Just as Liga mentioned, I invite you to write your questions in Q&A chat section, and we will monitor them and address them during the Q&A session later. I very much encourage you to ask questions today, not only because this is one of the first information sessions in Latvia about 3Cs initiative, but also of today's panel, and you will be able to get the most up-to-date information about the initiative. And now, please allow me to introduce the first of our speakers, Mr. Reinis Bērziņš, Chairman of the Management Board of ALTUM, state-owned development finance institution of Latvia. Reinis is member also of the supervisory board of the 3Cs initiative, and ALTUM is Latvian counterpart of the 3Cs investment fund. Reinis, the floor and the screen is yours.
Thank you, Eva. Good afternoon, everyone. And I guess, Jan, and perhaps other colleagues, good morning, right? So nice to see you, all of you, and most of you I know, of course. And I guess this is a great honor for me to participate in this event, and really thanks to AmCham for organizing this event. I will be very focused from our perspective, and I really enjoyed what also Eva gave this introduction for ourselves, right? Because ALTUM basically is a development bank. So we are a development bank, and I guess this answer why we are such a big advocates of this initiative comes quite easy, right? Because till the moment of COVID crisis, our number of our portfolio was something like 800 million euros, something like that. But it consisted of only some tiny projects. So basically, we had a threshold of maximum amount what we get granted for different financial instruments, loans, guarantees, etc. 5 million euros for a particular loan type called mezzanine loan. So we were discussing quite often with our shareholders. There are three ministries which are our shareholders: Ministry of Economy, Finance, and Agriculture as well, right? That there might be some projects which are beyond, of course, the scope who are trying to reach to us, right? So actually, this idea was already, I guess, starting from the very beginning for creation of ALTUM, because our focus is SMEs, getting finance to market gap where it's for SMEs, but time after time also larger clients came to us. So it was not surprise when I just make fast forward to 2018, when our Polish colleagues from BGK came, similar development bank, only much larger in Poland. When they came and when they presented, when they showed that it's a commercial based, this will be commercial based project, that it will have like consultants which will come from professional private sector. We were very interesting, and of course it also, we like this focus: infrastructure, energy, digitalization, as well as we also enjoyed that this cross border, and last but far not to least, right, that it also will give quite a good internal rate of return, right? ALTUM, I'm very proud that we are like doing quite a good job of finding market gaps, but we are going when there is internal rate of return quite significant for us, right? So that's the reason why we joined that. By the way, some of the money which Latvia dedicated, those 20 million euros, actually comes from ALTUM's profit. So we have our own skin in the game, let's say so. We really believe with our work to do what we have done so far. We raised our profit and we put in this fund. And now if I need to look on this scope of how Latvia is now doing, I would say so. I like that Latvia is quite active on different fields. There are projects which would like to be with energy sector or digitalization on the infrastructure, and I can just name several of them. If I'm talking about infrastructure, the biggest which comes into my mind is a Rail Baltica side project in Salaspils logistical center, right? So we know, every one of us knows this Rail Baltica initiative, and of course it will happen either there is a 3Cs investment fund or not, right? But different side projects may take place if the government, if on those countries, government or private sector will find some money to support those. So there is an initiative basically created from the ressort of traffic ministry of traffic, and they would like to create this Salaspils logistical center. So this is one example. The second example which comes into my mind is from energy sector, and I really do appreciate a company which also is quite known for in Latvia, company named La Flora, right? So they will create, it's already existing company with a quite a good track record. What they would like to do in a district of Jelgava, try to make an industrialization like a park, and then 2/3 of this project will go to the windmills, this project with the green energy, right, creation. So this is another type of those projects which are submitting. Those projects are with some concrete details, some EBITDA margins and so on. But there are also some other projects like in digitalization from a well-known Latvian company, LMT, which are more like describing this idea and so on. And unfortunately, they are not detailed. But overall, it's something like 10 or 9 initiatives have come to ALTUM. And for us, it's like it's not like mandatory to come to ALTUM. We will anyway will send those guys to Joe Phillips and the guys, and I really admire the job what Joe and team does. Right, it's like really guys with a quite big understanding of throughout all those projects, because it's a really quite a big scope of energy, digitalization, and infrastructure. And we are like kind of sparring partners before they go to Amber. We sometimes like also discuss some ideas and then arrange together with Joy and his team some meetings, right? With Latvian Ergo, LMT, different companies we have to say invited to our premises. But it's not mandatory. Guys can also reach Amber directly because, as I said, it's a private initiative. Amber has their mandate and so on. So this is from our perspective, several of those points. And I guess I will also say several last sentence from myself. Sometimes there are some, I guess, like bias, like not quite a good understanding of what this fund is created for. Some argue that, guys, you are dealing with the money and then you are like saying, oh, it will be sometimes 2-digit number rate and so on. It's a cheap money's time and so on. Then the next thing is how it comes together with EIB or EBRD and so on. We don't see any competition there, because if we are talking about EIB, they are like big loans with small rates and so on. This is an equity instrument, right? What we are talking about. This is one thing, right? So it's also, both of things can be answered quite easily why this is a commercial and with the 2-digit internal rate of return, and as well as why it doesn't compete with any institutions we know, EBRD, EIB, and I would like to say so actually complete like gives some additional value when you are basically trying to structure the projects big like those. So those are like introductory remarks. So I'm very glad if there will be some questions from also regarding ALTUM and what we are doing. So I will be glad to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. I think we will have quite a lot of practical questions, maybe most probably at the end and the Q&A session. And as it was already mentioned today, that this year is the year when Latvia will host the 3Cs Initiative Summit. And we have today a guest who is head of the Secretariat of the Preparation of 3Cs Riga Summit, Ambassador Edgars Bondars. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, good afternoon from Riga. Good morning for East Coast and in the United States. I'm happy to address you and thank you very much, AmCham, for organizing this event, because we feel really that information about the 3Cs Initiative Summit and the 3Cs Initiative itself should be more spread towards public in different levels, of course, including the business community. This is a very special day for Latvia, for diplomacy of Latvia, because 101 years ago, Latvia was recognized as an independent state, but by many countries. So I think that we all can feel as diplomats of economic diplomacy and as goodwill ambassadors. So I can congratulate every one of us because of recognition of Latvia more than 100 years ago. Well, yes, Riga will host the next 3Cs Initiative Summit, and summit will consist of different parts. One will be presidential meeting. The other will be business forum. It will take place in 20th and 21st of June. 1 month in advance, in May, end of May, the Civil Society Forum is planned. And this will be first time in 3Cs Initiative Summit's history that Civil Society Forum is organized. Also in June, there will be a parliamentary meeting. It's an initiative of our parliament to organize a meeting of 3Cs Initiative countries' parliamentarians. So I think we are going really not only deeper but wider. It's also, which also is very important. 3Cs Initiative Summit Business Forum will consist of, as Eva mentioned already, 3 different panels. It will be related to digital affairs, to transport, to energy sector, and also there will be, of course, attention paid to investments. So will have also investment panel. But overall, Business Forum of 3Cs Initiative is a unique platform for development of economic relations and investment opportunities within 3Cs Initiative region and beyond. Very important is US role and support to 3Cs Initiative. Participation of the United States is essential within a 3Cs Initiative Fund, and it will positively affect reputation of 3Cs Initiative region worldwide, and will definitely increase attention of potential investors from around the globe. US support and investment in the 3Cs Initiative Fund would increase ability also of Latvia to invest in the development of regional projects and allow to participate more actively within projects of other 3Cs Initiative countries. Also, it is very important that the Riga summit will be great opportunity of to strengthen transatlantic relations, especially in the light of recent developments to the east of 3Cs Initiative region. So, Eva, you mentioned very right that security is very important angle of 3Cs Initiative. Why 3Cs Initiative Summit is important for Latvia? Time to time we can hear that Latvia is not enough advertising itself in the global arena. I think it will be a very good opportunity. And during, since I am appointed as ambassador for the preparation of summit, I had a wonderful opportunity to visit different companies in Latvia, including Mikrotik, and I was astonished about the possibilities what our companies can provide. And I think it will be a good opportunity to advertise ourselves. And also it will be a good opportunity to advertise ourselves for other countries within the region. Also, it is important that Riga can present itself as a modern city with many digital dreams for tomorrow, and as a modern city of 21st century. I think that it is very important that event as a 3Cs Initiative Summit will help to reshape a perception in the US about the 3Cs Initiative region itself, because I can imagine that in the US, our region is more seen as a post-communist country, a region of post-communist countries, but I would like to assure that we might have a new identity in this region. In many countries of 3Cs Initiative region, internet is fastest, fastest in the world, and we have other digital successes. So it is very important that we also make connectivity between north and south effective. Well, of course, after Riga summit, it is our responsibility how to develop the outcome, how to develop the story. But definitely those who are participating today in this event will help to create this story, which we will keep alive for the future. So thank you very much again, and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And now I think it's time also to have a bit of more of information of the start of the 3Cs Initiative. And we are pleased that Mr. Ian Brzezinski, Senior Fellow at Atlantic Council Europe Center and Brent Scoforth Center of Strategy and Security has joined us. Ian brings over 3 decades of experience in US national security matters, and having served in senior policy positions in the Department of Defense and the US Congress. So Ian, the floor is yours. and good morning. I think it's with this time. Jan, the microphone.
There we are.
Yeah.
Well, Leva, thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's as we say, morning in America here. It's bright and sunny, and what could be a better way to start than a panel on 3 Cs, particularly with the likes of Ines, Edgar, Zular, and Joe. These are the 3 Cs rock stars who've done so much to drive this initiative forward. I almost feel like a groupie, my lighter, following their footsteps and their leadership in this. I really appreciate AmCham convening this forum and the leadership that the AmCham and Riga and others have brought to the US-Latvia economic relationship. And I'm privileged to kind of have an opportunity to share with you some impressions of 3 Cs, which I've had the privilege to follow over the last 7 or 8 years. Instead of maybe getting into the history of 3 Cs, I thought I'd make 5 quick points about the initiative. I mean, first, this is a bold geopolitical project. You know, for what fires me up about this, what animates many in America about this, and probably across Central Europe, and I hope across Western Europe, is that it's driven by a desire, and indeed today, the urgent need to complete the vision of a Europe that is truly undivided, free, prosperous, and secure. And it's bold. And as Leva said, you know, we're talking about addressing an infrastructure gap between Central and Eastern Europe and Western Europe that's over $500 billion in magnitude, perhaps $1 trillion. And a project of this financial magnitude and the complexity that comes with doing anything in a multinational way, well, that defines bold, that defines ambitious. So this is big, it's geopolitical, it's geoeconomic. Second, this project has real urgency. You know, just in better times, so to speak, an infrastructure gap or infrastructure, a lack of infrastructure impairs economic growth, it weakens energy security, it limits societal connectivity across the region with Western Europe. It can be a security challenge, and now touching kind of today's context, because it impairs military movement in the region. It's much easier for us to move forces east and west, but very difficult for us to move forces up and down NATO's eastern frontier in support of NATO allies and partners. That has to be addressed. And 3 Cs, it promises to exercise the power of infrastructure to accelerate economic growth, to enhance prosperity, to strengthen economic resilience, reinforce energy security, and not just of Central Europe, but Europe as a whole. And the urgency comes from the need to dig out of the economic ramifications or consequences of the COVID crisis, and is given urgency by the aggression that we're facing in the East. Third, this Central and East European launched and led initiative presents a new and innovative public-private partnership, one that is designed to leverage the power of the market to catalyze and drive forward regional infrastructure development. And I know Joe is going to dig into this more, and he's the institutional core of it. The 3 Cs Initiative Investment Fund is institutional core, and there's a new model of approach to infrastructure development that 3 Cs has brought. And his organization adheres to purely commercial principles. His fund has been stood up to be free from political interference. And by adhering to those principles, this fund has the potential, in fact, it already is, serving as a spotlight on economic opportunity present across Central and Eastern Europe. It's a beacon to the over $1 trillion of foreign direct investment circulating the globe, seeking long-term, profitable returns offered by infrastructure. This is groundbreaking. It's a new model for infrastructure development that I believe will be applied to other regions around the world. And it's a project, it's a product from a region that's deep in my heart, and that's Central Europe. My 4th point is that concerns the United States. And in the United States, support for the 3 Cs initiative is strong and continues to grow. I mean, literally 1 month to the day following President Biden's inauguration, his newly confirmed Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, delivered a statement to a meeting of 3 Cs foreign ministers, robustly endorsing the initiative and the fund. And he said, quote, "Bringing the private sector to the table alongside governments is a smart way to make big infrastructure projects happen And he went on to say, and a bigger investment fund will make that possible. And the Sofia Summit, the 3Cs Sofia Summit last summer, featured statements by President Biden, the Secretary of Commerce. And this commitment in the US executive branch is shared in Congress, which is expressed through legislation in support for 3Cs. There's new legislation in Congress in both the Senate and the House driving forward to expand the US government's ability to support the digital dimension of 3Cs in addition to its energy dimension. And of course, my hope is that the US commitment to make an equity investment in the 3Cs fund will be executed in the near future. The delay is a problem. I agree with Edgar's, it's hurting the fund, it's undercutting credibility of the United States. But I sense there's a real effort to overcome some of these hurdles that the administration is finding and will deliver in this promise. And I can tell you on Capitol Hill, the support for this investment continues to expand. My fifth and final point, and I'll be quick, is this is an initiative that's poised for success. And the statistics of the region made this absolutely clear. By combining their efforts together, the nations of Central Europe have created a critical mass, a region that brings to the market a combined population of 110 million and a GDP over $2 trillion. That captures the attention of private financial markets. This is a region that Lena pointed out, boasts a growth rate before COVID of about 3.5% over the 5 years leading to the COVID crisis, and was then projected to be sustained all the way out to 2030. This is a region that brings to the table some of the EU's highest rates of return for foreign direct investment, for FDI. In a 2019 ranking of EU member states, the top 6 rates of return in the EU were found in 3Cs countries, with ranges from 7 to 11%. That is a lot. And so the 3Cs region presents a rare mix of economic and political stability associated with EU membership, yet they're offering national growth rates and rates of return that are associated most often with the developing world. That's a rare investment opportunity. That is a rare and appealing investment opportunity. So let me close by saying that when one looks forward out to 2030 and beyond, if 3Cs nations stick and remain steadfast to their commitment to this initiative, one can easily envision a region featuring some of the world's most modern highways and transportation networks, a hyper-efficient energy system, a digital communication system second to none. This is a recipe for prosperity, for economic resilience, for climate-conscious societies, and all the connectivity and interconnections necessary for cross-border innovation and productivity. And this is good for the region, it's good for its security, it's good for all of Europe, and as an American, I really believe it's good for the transatlantic community. So let me close on that.
Thank you, Ian. And now I think it's time for us to hear a real life experience and a perspective of real investee. And we are glad to have today Ular Jaakso, founder and partner of Digital Nation, founder of Greenergy Data Center, which is a project funded by 3Cs Initiative. So Ular, the digital floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eva. Good afternoon to everyone on this session. The daily life of entrepreneurs is definitely a bit different from the many policymakers, and let me bring you a few insights from that perspective as well. And in order to make it more easier to follow, I would like to also share my screen, making sure that all the points are taken seriously. I hope the screen could be seen by everyone. And I will focus on the very important question, how to secure investment. I think that's the beginning of all entrepreneurial activities. The Greenergy data center itself was created to relieve the hunger for the energy efficient, secure and sustainable data centers. And every word here has a very deep meaning in this vision. CE was described here as a fast growing region, but at the same time we have centers are not the exclusion here. Also in data centers field, we have a lot of gap to fill. Secure, nowadays, secure doesn't anymore mean just the physical security. It also means the stakeholder security. When we look at the framework around the EU and the world, whether it's OECD-driven Blue Dot network in partnership with the US or other governments, or as a trusted connectivity principles, we see more and more how how fragile is the digital world around us and how well it should be secured. And energy efficient is not new for us. We all in the middle of the green transition here, and the EU perspectives on the green data center policy are there for everyone to look at. And there are two little investments made in order to actually secure it in this region. And we are currently in the phase where the first purpose-built modern modular and green data center in the Baltics is about to be open. The construction phase during the COVID has not been an easy one. Whether you have to move the experts to the site or you have to move the goods from the logistical nightmares to the site. Yeah, it has been a very, very tough year after the start of this investment. But this is not the Photoshop, it's a real data center already, and it actually up and running and going through the final stage of the compliances and all the other procedures to make sure that the building is safe both from the digital or the physical angle. The good question is why we decided to partner with the 3C Initiative Investment Fund. There are many other funds on the market, and smaller and bigger. And I would just say that there were 5 critical criteria for us where we found the perfect match with the fund. First of all, the territory, as our ambition is to invest and to build data centers in the CE region, and this is almost like 100% match. We may look at the countries also near to the 3C initiative region in the future, but the current match is perfect. Industry, digital subject is in the focus of the fund, that's a match. And we very well respected the know-how, what also was mentioned here by Reinis already, that the Amber Infrastructure, who is the manager of this investment portfolio, and the experience behind that is very useful for any entrepreneur. Deal size, it's absolutely a match for our initial first foreseeable future. And if we will do our job well and the fund will grow also well, I think we will be in the match also for the next 5 to 10 years. What is also very good for entrepreneur not to go through the time to time new due diligences or stakeholder changes. And the investment period also, the fund has a long-term vision, and that's exactly the business where we are in as well. What is the investment process with the 3C Initiative Investment Fund? Let me take away what it is not. It is not a loan or grant or subsidy. Don't expect it to be any political administrative process. It's an investment process where everything is important: vision, team, money, risks. It's a proper investment validation process, no difference from any other private equity fund or any other bank loan. And you must make sure that you are actually ready for that. What is the learning from our side? I think as an entrepreneur, be patient, respect the process. There is always a struggle between the banks and entrepreneurs. That the banks don't always understand the entrepreneurial vision, or the process will be faster. But there is a process, there is a cover rules, and once you learn them, you understand that they can't be avoided. Be persistent means that focus on the vision, and also under the pressure. There will be a lot of questions asked and challenges on the way, but if you focus on the vision and on your team, and you make that very clear, then it's also easy to stay on the path. And be proactive. No one else beside entrepreneur is actually responsible to make the investment to happen. Everyone else is considering all the possibilities also why to say no. And the only person who still believes into the vision till the last minute is the entrepreneur himself, and therefore plan early and react fast, and be prepared for any next step of the process. Be ready also for the obstacles. Like in our case, if the meeting is arranged in one of the countries what will be closed next morning due to the COVID pandemic, then you have to find a way how to get into the country. Very small tricks also sometimes needed. And in the end, maybe I will close with a few words here, that it's just, you need only one idea. You probably need to go through 100 of models how to work on this idea. You need to spend thousands of hours to design those models, probably not less than 1 million details to be discussed with you and your team, and also with the investment fund. And then most probably you will have the investment around 100 million, less or more, to go further with your vision and your dream to build something new and relevant. This is my let's say quick introduction to the process of working with the fund. I would like to say that the data center nowadays is nothing else than the foundation of the digital society. And I think it's if you look at the digital responsibility, what is also part of the corporate social responsibility matrix, then making sure that the data are secure and green is basically a must trend now at every board, whether it's a public institution, government, or the large-scale enterprise. And I'm so glad to see how quickly we see the interest growing towards this data center, not only from Estonia, but also from Latvia, what is very close to us, and also Lithuania. As mentioned, this data center is built for the Baltic region. It's the most safest data center in this region, and we're looking very much forward that this great start with this fund will enable also the companies and organizations in the region to benefit from it, not only to get returns on it. Our customers will like to pay as less as possible. Our investors will like to earn as much as possible. And it's an entrepreneurial team who has the task to make the balance here to serve the long-term interest on both sides. Thank you very much. That were my insights, and looking forward to grow the business even further.
Thank you. And now I think Renis already mentioned him as the person to go to and address. So it's my pleasure to introduce Joe Phillips, the head of 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund and Amber Infrastructure Limited. He has been responsible for the creation of the investment fund for the 3Cs Initiative, and Amber is exclusive investment advisor to the 3Cs Fund. So Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm speaking to you from our office in Warsaw, where we have most of our regional team based for the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund. And I think it's a great honor to be here today in very distinguished company. So I'm going to take Ian's example and make 4 very brief points in order to allow us to get on to the discussion and the questions. The first, I think, is that there is a distinction between the initiative and the fund. The fund is a very practical implementation of some of the ideas behind the initiative. The 3Cs Initiative is a geopolitical initiative formed by the government, the 12 member states in Central and Eastern Europe, as Ian said. And that could have been a geopolitical talking shop, but here we see within the fund a very practical example of what that cooperation has led to. And I think that's the first point I'd like to make. This is a real and practical, tangible example of what the 3Cs Initiative can deliver. It's not the only one. There are many others, and many other have potential, but this is the first. The second thing is, what do we do within the fund? And very simply, and we've put this slide up so people can have something else to look at other than me, but it does give a little bit of a snapshot of the fund. So the fund provides equity capital for projects or companies in 3 infrastructure sectors: energy, digital, and transport, within the 3Cs countries, which are nice and neatly colored on the map there. Now, you'll notice there are 11 colored in. The reality is that whilst Austria is a 3Cs country, it does not have the infrastructure need or need for capital or infrastructure that the other 11 countries have. So, that's the only reason Austria is not highlighted. So the third thing is, well, okay, so we're providing this equity capital for infrastructure. Why? And I think a number of the speakers have referred to this. There is a fundamental issue within the 11 countries in the 3Cs that are highlighted, that there has been this long period of underinvestment in infrastructure. And very simply, there is not sufficient public capital from EU or governments to deliver the need for that infrastructure. I think we've heard various numbers, greater than 500 or 600 billion by 2030. I think the IMF figure is over €1 trillion. There is a very substantial need for infrastructure. But that's also an opportunity, because as the CEE converges with the rest of Europe in terms of its economy, driven by the GDP outperformance that we've seen and that we all expect to continue, there is an opportunity for investors to provide capital make a return, and at the same time deliver the infrastructure that is needed to sustain that GDP growth. And private capital has to play a key role in that infrastructure investment, as it does in Western and Northern Europe, but not yet in the CE. Now we're beginning to see it, but the role of private capital in CEE infrastructure is very small compared to the rest of Europe. And that's an important point to make in here, is that this is not to replace public capital, it's to work in partnership. And the example I always give is Cargo Unit, which was our first investment, as you'll see here, which is the largest lessor of locomotives for freight in Poland. And what you see in the rail sector generally is massive EU and public investment in the track and the signaling. But at the same time, if you upgrade that track and signaling, you need modern electric locomotives that run on that track. And where the private sector is good at financing is those locomotives. We provide the financing to deliver those modern locomotives to run on the track that was funded by EU and governments. So it's a partnership. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing I'd like to say is, where do we stand today? Well, we've raised €1 billion, largely from the development banks within the region, including ALTUM, as Rainer said earlier. And we're now looking to raise significant private capital with an initial target of €3 billion. So that's now the opportunity is not just for us to make the investments, but the opportunity is for us to raise private capital to invest in this region and benefit from the fundamental growth potential of the region. And just to prove that you don't have to be able to add up to work in finance, I have a fifth one, even though I said there were four, and that is that that partnership between public and private capital and public and private sector, I think, is something that will continue to deliver for this region over the long term as it grows, as it converges with Western Europe and Northern Europe, and will provide benefits not just to the investors, but also the people in the region. So I think this is a very important and practical example of what the 3Cs initiative can do when it joins up the various governments around the region and implements very practical solutions to the problems that are faced by the region in the infrastructure sector. That's all I'd like to say. As others have said, we are very open to approaches from either companies or projects who are seeking equity investment, or from investors who are looking for exposure to infrastructure in the region. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And first of all, I would like to remind the audience, quite a numerous audience, that this is a time for the questions to start writing the questions and address the panelists. And while we wait for the questions to come in, I would like to open a discussion, maybe a bit wide, if I may say so. It is known that the fund will operate on purely commercial basis, so making investments without political interference into regional projects that promise commercially competitive rates of return. So my question most probably to Joe and Ian and Reynes would be, is it really a possibility? Is it really possible? And secondly, how to promote this culture of cross-country, cross-border cooperation, rather than looking out for our own interests. So maybe, Joe, can you share from your own experience how this cross-border cooperation works, if it works, if there are any difficulties, and so on?
Okay, taking the point about cross-border cooperation, I think what's important here is to note that what we're not trying to do is invest only in assets that physically span a border. I think that's important, that that's not what we're trying to do, because trying to span a border with an infrastructure asset or any other asset is complicated. I happen to live in Scotland, which I always describe as the more civilized end of the United Kingdom, and the number of cross-border projects between Scotland and England, even though they're technically the same country, is very low, if not zero. What we're trying to do here is provide infrastructure that assists connectivity in the region, and that can be by filling in a gap in the fiber optic network somewhere. It can be in providing data centers that act as hubs for data transmission and data exchange within the region, as well as providing the service across the region. It can be by providing investment in renewable energy in one country, which is then capable of being transmitted across the interconnected networks. So when you look at it that way, it's very important that governments have the same aspirations and have the same views, because they need to have, you need to have stability in the region. You have the stability of regulation, stability of approach. You need to have commitment to infrastructure long term. And therefore, it's more about the holistic level of cooperation between governments than it is about spanning borders physically. So I think the answer is the 3Cs initiative is an excellent example of governments setting out to achieve an objective, which is to improve the infrastructure in the region, to ensure energy security and energy transition and connectivity, and then providing capital to kickstart this fund to deliver examples of that. Now, I used cargo unit as an example a little while ago. You know, we bought this asset to modernize the fleet and expand the fleet in Poland, but to expand it geographically. So one of the first things we've done with cargo unit is we've now expanded into Romania to provide modern locomotives as Romania goes through an investment program on its rail and track. So, you know, again, operating across the region, very similar approach and supported by government.
Thank you, Joe. Ian, would you have some comments on this? The microphone.
I'm notorious for never using the unmute button, so I apologize on that. You know, the way I would look at it is that, you know, cross-border collaboration has to have a top and a bottom-up approach, and that's what 3Cs is doing. You have the 3Cs governments working together to create a context that is more hospitable to cross-border projects. You have initiatives like the 3Cs Fund, which really is groundbreaking, helping attract the private sector capital to add more momentum and capacity to fulfill those visions. I actually think it's kind of a mix of projects that are perhaps based in one country that emanate into another, and infrastructure that crosses the border, via Carpathia, Rail Baltica, gas pipelines. Those are all investable, profitable opportunities, but you need private sector initiative. 3Cs Fund is providing a magnet for that. You need governments to provide the regulatory permissions and environment that's conducive to this investment. And there's one thing that could be done more, I would say, by the 3Cs governments, is to actually shift this initiative at the government level from something that is kind of episodic, a summit to summit meeting, to having a structure that is operating 24/7 to market the region, to market the initiative, and to serve as kind of a driver of events and incubator of ideas for what can be done to make the region more competitive and more attractive to that foreign direct investment that really is circulating the globe, looking for opportunities such that are provided in Central and Eastern Europe through infrastructure.
Thank you, Ian. And Reinis, maybe you have some words also based on the current Latvia's experience in the project. So what are some of the forthcoming?
Several I already mentioned, but I guess from the general perspective, nothing so much to mention as an additional value what's been said already by Ian and Joy, just describing overall Latvian situation. And there have been actually several NDAs also concluded between Latvian companies and Amber, right? And what I see that sometimes they are very surprised how fast we can arrange those meetings with Joy and the team, and we are very glad about that. But sometimes we have this situation, we have the feeling that next steps are missing, honestly saying. So we are like here, we have several NDAs, we have quite good conversations. Any of those projects coming from Latvia are commercial driven, right? We are never like spamming with grant ideas. The thing which is a bit missing is that sometimes idea is quite good. We would like to see more detailed information. Several projects had quite good detailed information, like Rail Baltica, like La Flora, which I mentioned, and so on. But some still are missing. So yeah, we would encourage to be more detailed in that perspective. Thanks.
Thank you. And we have a question from the audience, and it's addressed for anyone in the panel, so it's voluntarily. You mentioned that the 3Cs initiative enjoys strong international support from countries outside the 3Cs initiative. So can you explain more what that support looks like? Is there any way your international supporters, governmental or non-governmental, could do more to support the initiative? Any other, Joe? You are smiling. Perhaps you can.
Okay, I'll go first. So I think like, there have been many public statements from various governments supporting the 3Cs initiative, perhaps none more strong than the United States, and I'm sure that Ian has already alluded to that. The reality is that support may become more practical over time. So certainly we have had discussions with various development agencies from the United States, from Asia, from other parts of the European Union. So I think there is a prospect of real practical support in terms of investment in the future. I think that from my perspective, that's important. I think the other thing is that around the EU in particular, we have attended a number of events in different EU countries outside the region where we've promoted the benefits of companies outside the region getting involved in infrastructure projects within the CEE. And I think that's another example of growing interest from other countries. But I think it's no secret that there's a big infrastructure requirement here. I will make one comment, is that I think one of the things that hasn't yet occurred, but I think this is changing now, is private capital has in some ways not invested in the region, but has sought opportunities outside Europe before CEE, which I think is a bit of a shame, because these are all EU countries with substantial, as Ian said, substantial population and substantial potential for economic growth, and a history of outgrowing the EU average over the last few years. And therefore, I think one of the things that needs to happen is we all need to continue to point out the potential opportunity for private capital in this region when it's seeking enhanced returns compared to Western and Northern Europe. You do see infrastructure funds investing in, Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and sort of jumping over CEE. And I think that's a lost opportunity. And that's one of the things the fund is there to try and address.
If I could add on that, I mean, again, this is kind of where there's a real need for a 3C secretariat or 3C's office. If I could, and Joe will correct me, the Amber Infrastructure Group, the 3Cs Fund, is not a marketing organization. It's an investment organization. It does the hard work of figuring out what projects are profitable, what projects are going to provide a positive commercial return, and then investing them and making them happen. That's a lot of work. And that in itself is a fact that gives credibility to the 3Cs initiative and helps highlight the opportunities in the region. But more has to be done by the governments of the region. And if I could, and I'm so excited to see AmCham doing this, but AmChams can contribute to this. But there has to be an organization whose job is to basically set up an office in one of the financial centers in Western Europe or North America, London, Berlin, Brussels, or New York, staff it up with a handful of people, and their jobs will be to be the face of the 3Cs on a 24/7 basis. They rack and stack all the opportunities, sustain and update the list of points of contact and basic facts about what each investment opportunity is all about, the rates of return, when they're going to, what their investment profiles are, what their investment timelines are, when they're going to go operational, what are going to be the rates of return. They need to serve as an organizational goal, represent the 3Cs at all the different expos around the world, be in the Middle East, Asia, North America. They need to be driving and marketing an initiative to highlight the opportunities of this region. And they could also serve as an incubator for ideas on how to further harmonize, all the different rules and regulations between the different 3Cs nations, to harmonize them and thereby make the region that much more attractive for infrastructure projects and infrastructure investment. It is a real need. The initiative has matured over 7 years to a point where it just can't operate on a summit to summit basis. It needs an office, it needs a face, it needs a phone number where where people can go to engage the initiative.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Yes, thank you very much, Ian. I think it was really important what you just said about the need to harmonize legislations and synchronize them. I think that event, which will take place in Riga within the framework of summit, the parliamentarian conference, it will also discuss the possibilities of harmonization and legislation, how to make cross-border projects more effective. But speaking about the interest from the others, from other possible partners outside of Three Seas Initiative region, I can tell about my previous experience in Warsaw, where I was posted just recently. There was a big interest from my colleagues, from diplomats, about Three Seas Initiative itself. And when I came back to Riga, also I discovered that there's a big interest about Three Seas Initiative and projects and possibility to be part of it from the Western Balkan countries and also Eastern Partnership countries like Ukraine, Georgia. So the more information is spread abroad, the more interest is coming back. So the information is rolling like a snowball. So I think visibility of the Three Seas Initiative is growing. Thank you.
Thank you. Just maybe a little bit of the practical note and coming back to Latvia. I see that there are quite a number of Latvian ambassadors in various countries present in the audience. And one part of their job is also to talk and meet with potential investors in Latvia. So maybe I could ask Reinis and also Ambassador Bondars to give a bit of a practical tips for them. So why should investors invest in Latvia and make cross-border investments and look for some cross-border projects? So what would be your perspective for them also to give some bit of a takeaway from 3C's perspective? Reinis, maybe you could start.
No problem. Yeah, I can just give some kind of some points. I guess the main thing is, if we are looking from investors' perspective, is what been already said several times, right? This region and Latvia, for sure, is a great place to basically to deal with project with a great internal rate of return. If you are looking on the same project in Latvia and perhaps in some Western countries, we will see that there is a much higher internal rate of return for this project, either in energy or digitalization or infrastructure, you name it, but we can show real life examples. Secondly, I think that one of the things also Latvia is currently, I guess, quite famous in the region is that there is a lot of, during the COVID time, there have been sufficient answer from the government. So there are a lot of tools, either for small projects, with big projects, to be supported with. ALTUM administered several of those programs, right? The number of our programs have increased during the COVID-19 time from 25 to 35. Our portfolio now is $1 billion, which is for Latvia amount, it's almost $1 billion, which is among those top Latvian banks, right? So we are quite sure what we are doing. As I said, it's still with a lot of those small projects, but we have some programs, and I would like to say, so this answer during COVID time have been from government perspective, in my opinion, adequate. And the third thing, we see that there's a lot of those things where we also look on different indexes, how to make a business. Latvia is usually among the top countries. So I think it's easy to make a business here. So those could be like my 3 things to be mentioned in this perspective. Thanks.
Ambassador, do you have some? Yep.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for very good news that my colleagues are involved in this webinar and is observing our conversation. You know, it's quite natural that for embassy and diplomats, one of the job is to how look for investment. So I think this is very natural that my colleagues are looking for more investment in not only in Latvia, but kind of promoting this region and 3C's initiative project itself. But I think that the 3C's initiative summit is kind of tool to promote all the idea of 3C's initiative and the digitalization and connectivity, and to encourage investors to have a closer look to these issues. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask also again, Reinis and Joe, the central element of the initiative, the 3C's initiative investment fund, is that it directs capital into multinational infrastructure projects, and it directs capital from the participant states, if I may say so. So what is the status today with investment in the fund from individual countries? Is it, to simply put, is it efficient, sufficient? If you have any concerns, or?
Joy, if I may. Sorry, yeah, you go ahead.
No, please, Renis. No.
Okay, just from Latvian perspective, we are like one of those countries. So we have also, if we are looking at what is current situation, then from different countries, we were, I guess, with the Estonians, we were third and fourth who joined the club, right? We were there from the very beginning, since 2018, when we signed the memorandum of understanding. And we never said that the beginning will be very big. We said that we have a mandate from government to put our profit, which is without 20 million euros is quite enough, right? Honestly saying, we are not the biggest country, right? And the biggest development institution. So we kept our promise. We went to the government, we received the mandate, we committed that, and we are of course open for any other discussions, but then I guess we will go together in the line with other countries. So this is my just very short but very precise answer. Thanks.
If I may make a comment on that, I think the answer is it is not the function of the fund simply to invest the capital of the development banks of the region. The role of the fund is to take that, let's call it seed capital, although it's very substantial seed capital, it's almost €1 billion, and demonstrate that it is possible to make good investments in infrastructure which generate a return for those investors, and at the same time provide critical infrastructure for the region at an appropriate cost to the users of that infrastructure, which is ultimately all of us, to demonstrate that and to raise more capital from the private sector for the fund. So I think there's been very substantial commitment from the development banks within the region. It varies from country to country. The significant majority of the capital comes from BGK, the Polish Development Bank. Poland is the largest economy in the region that we cover. And I hope that in future other countries will also increase their commitments. But I think the most important thing is that having made 3 investments and deployed over 440 million within the first 18 months of the life of the fund, that we bring private capital into the fund and into investments in the region, because the 1 billion on its own is not going to make the difference. What we're doing is we're going to invest that money, we're going to raise more money, but we're at the same time going to bring other infrastructure funds into the region and make it an area of focus for them too, because the need is very substantial. So I think it's more than just deploying the capital that we've been given that has been invested in the fund by the development banks. It's growing the fund itself, bringing in private capital, making good investments, and returning a good return to those investors.
Thank you. Yes, and one more a bit broader issue before we move to questions from the audience is the current geopolitical situation, especially during the last few weeks. And there's also a calls within Europe for energy security and so on. So how do you think, maybe it's first for Ian, that are there any changes needed for the current priorities in 3Cs initiative, which is transport, energy, digitalization? Should they stay the same? Should they maybe refocused? How do you feel, or if you have any comment on that?
No, I don't think that the crises require an adjustment of the focus of 3Cs. Energy, transport, digital are core pillars of infrastructure. They're stand up certainly among the most important dimension of cross-border and border infrastructure. If anything, the twin crises of Russian aggression and the economic devastation of COVID, they underscore the urgency and the relevance of this initiative. They make the initiative even more important. And my hope is that there's a silver lining in these crises. It'll prompt the United States to deliver on its investment. It'll stimulate Western European recognition of the importance and the opportunity generated by 3Cs, and perhaps help effectuate the US-German statement on NS2, which called for support and didn't say investment, but that's kind of what's inferred, into 3Cs fund and 3Cs infrastructure projects. So, in short, I don't see a need to change its direction. I see these events that we're facing today as adding, underscoring the importance of the 3 Cs initiative and all the positive things they can do for the region, for Europe, and the transatlantic community.
Thank you. Ular, you had a hand raised.
Yes, I'd like to comment on that, we from the data center perspective, we see actually raising interest about this kind of solutions where the clarity on the stakeholders' vision is also combined with the business offer and the service offer. No, maybe some of you know that Estonia was the first country in the world to build in Luxembourg the data embassy, where we have like an offline set of all our most critical country databases and registers. And that's exactly kind of service what we now see, that there are interest also from the not only 3C countries, but also countries from the Eastern Europe wider base, but also from the more non-stable countries having that kind of interest. And I think in this region we have good skill set for the employees. We have large investments going into the renewable energy, and we have a quite good climate situation. I think these data centers controlled by the stakeholders who respect the EU green transition, respect the Blue Dot Network principles, are actually suited very well to offer some peaceful port for those unstable winds.
Thank you. We have a question for Ambassador Bondars, although you've touched upon that already, but still, will the 3Cs summit in Riga be used also as an opportunity for policy alignment on EU files touching upon energy, digital and transport as a way to strengthen the Central and Eastern Europe voice in the EU? As an example is mentioned, as we have seen initiatives like this in the past, for instance, a meeting of digital ministers of the 3Cs initiative countries on EU digital files. Yeah, please, Ambassador.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, I think 3Cs Initiative Summit in Riga will help to mobilize certain things and activate positions towards our bigger commitments within the European Union. Of course, I think that we will find more common points in these positions and which will be presented in Brussels later on. So definitely.
If I could just add one thought. The ambassador noted that the 3C summit is scheduled for 2021 June. This is going to occur in the context of several very important transatlantic events. In the course of that week, you're probably going to see, or you're going to see a NATO summit in Madrid. You're probably going to see a G7 summit. You're probably going to see a US-EU summit. And then, of course, we have the 3C summit. And it seems to me we ought to be weaving a story linking these summits together, because they're an opportunity for the West to stand together and develop a comprehensive strategy, or update whatever we have as a comprehensive strategy for dealing with the challenges we face today, be it an assertive Russia, be it the ramifications of COVID. And you could see that week kind of painting a comprehensive strategy that involves a military security dimension via NATO, a broad economic dimension through the US and the EU and the G7, and of course, an important dimension, that economic element, would be the 3C summit. It's an opportunity for West European leaders to reaffirm, and the United States, North American leaders to reaffirm their solidarity with Central and Eastern Europe in these times, in these trying times. This is a big, big week for Central and Eastern Europe, and it's a big, big week for 3Cs. It's an opportunity to really highlight its importance as an integral part of a comprehensive transatlantic strategy for dealing with the challenges we face today and are likely to face in the near and medium term.
Thank you, Ian. Then I have a question. It comes actually from the Embassy of Republic of Moldova. And the question is, I would like to ask whether it is planned or taken into consideration to invite third countries who have shown interest in participating in 3Cs initiative projects to participate in some of the formats of the 7th summit of the 3Cs initiative. Most probably it is for you, Ambassador, in a way.
Yes, as I mentioned, there's a big interest from many different countries to take part in the summit. It's still under consideration in which form we would like to see our partners in Riga. So it's definitely there will be opportunity to visit Riga during the summit, but it's still under discussion in which format and in which event. So most probably business forum will be, and the civil society forum will be the most possible scenarios for visiting Riga. Thank you, but it's still under consideration.
Thank you. The time is moving forward, and most probably will have to kind of lead us closer to the end. But I would like to come back to the real life project, and Ulla asked you the question. Is you went through your presentation really about the tips and good things. Could you share some difficult parts, the things you did not plan to share with us, or maybe you hated something in the middle, or but still went through? So.
Yes, I think it's, I was probably one of the first leads to start to work in this portfolio. And I think that was the beginning of the strong partnership with the fund itself and Amber Infrastructure as investment advisor there. And I think it's almost a year from now, and it was quite the beginning of the process at that time. If there were any things related to the still working through all the procedures and processes, I think they are in the far past already. And I would never focus on anything negative, only positive in the future.
If I can continue that, do you see any additional projects in Estonia you would, I don't know, personally suggest to move forward?
I've been rather busy with this project. It has been quite complicated already, and therefore I have not spent too much time walking around in Estonia. But yes, lately, during the last 2 or 3 months, I have been participated at few Estonian ICT cluster trips, also to the Dubai Expo 2020 and a few other trips in the Africa. And I definitely see that not only for Estonian digital companies, but for any companies in the CE region here, the 3 Cs region, there is a lot of potential outside of that, and more we will coordinate our efforts among ourselves in this north-south direction here. We can actually become companies in the size able to serve other regions of the world as well. None of us is big enough to do it alone. I think that the fund doesn't only fit to fill some cap in the investment, but the most important actually builds the proven and working business relations between entrepreneurs of this region. I would consider that is even more important maybe that one first billion of money here, because that's anyway not sufficient. It's just as a lighthouse investments now. But I think all our business people have been thinking more west-east kind of direction here. And I'm also a member of the supervisory board Port of Tallinn, and we see how the goods are moving, and the north-south is as important as the east-west here. And therefore, my advice would be take your time, travel those countries, especially in those 3 Cs initiative events, because that's quite cool. The top of the iceberg of that opportunities there. But from Estonia, I see the possibility to grow only together with the other entrepreneurs from the region. We are too small here to cover the world.
Thank you. And then one question is, I believe it's mostly addressed to Joe, is could you please comment on TGI and then the investment screening mechanisms to avoid the risks like essential security interests, etc.?
Sorry, comment on, I didn't quite catch the
comment on the investment screening mechanisms in order to avoid the risks like the essential security interests.
I think it's fair to say that we have a very comprehensive diligence process, which covers a number of areas from very basic know your client type of diligence and the identity of the people involved in the project and their history, through to many other aspects, including commercial diligence, technical diligence, legal diligence. So it's, I think Ulla said there were 1 million details. I think he underestimated it. I think there are tens of millions of details. To put this in context, what we would normally expect to see is we would expect someone to approach us with the basis of a proposal in terms of an investment, a short document, or presentation, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, certainly no more than 10. We would then screen that at the initial stage. Does it meet the fund's criteria? Is it in the right geography? Is it the right stage? Is it the right size? And then we would, if it were, then we would begin an initial diligence process, which would be desktop based, including meetings. If we then decide to move ahead, we would go to an investment committee and have an initial non-binding offer of funding. And if that were accepted following a period of discussion and negotiation, we would then begin very substantial diligence. That substantial diligence involves us hiring lawyers, technical consultants, commercial consultants, financial and tax advisors. Probably at the height of a project, you might have 100 people working on this. And if that diligence then works through, you then negotiate the investment agreement and you make the investment. The whole process generally, as a rule of thumb, takes 9 to 12 months. Now, in the case of Greenergy, it happened a lot faster, but I think that was because Ulla was very focused on delivering, and that's part of his presentation, which is you've got to keep pushing and you've got to carry on making progress. And I think, Rainis, you touched on this as well, in terms of sometimes we sign an NDA, we get some initial information, but there's no drive behind the project, and you need that entrepreneurial drive. It's not for us to provide it. It has to come from the project. So this is a long and complex process with as Ulla said, millions of details to be dealt with. So, I mean, I would just encourage people to contact us and discuss it with us directly.
Thank you, Joe. Ulla.
Yes, one comment to add is that I think the word consultation is something to focus on as well. I don't see this cooperation with this fund as being as a black box going yes and no, in and out. I think the experience there to build more complex solutions like public-private partnership kind of business proposals, or to start from the early phase. Actually, if you are planning something really impactful and a large-scale investment here, I think the know you could receive from this fund as helpful as the money, because with the know you can get a lot of knowledge and in understanding what should be improved. But most probably this know will be valid in other funds as well. But that is very good co-learning process during this initial phase as well.
Thank you. And unfortunately, it is time for us to start to wrap up our discussion. And I would like to give each of you a few moments for a wrap up of today's discussion, and maybe say some final words and kind of summarize and focusing on 3C initiatives and benefits, and also which some takeaway which would serve as encouragement for those in considering to apply. So maybe Rainis, you would start.
Thank you so much, Ivan. I guess I will not once again try to repeat that, only in shorter version. I will just perhaps have this possibility and use to invite everyone soon. There will again one of the seminars we are organizing, but time after time we are organizing the big one. Just few days before COVID, also Joy and the team were here in Latvia, and Jan was here in Latvia. So we had a great Ulla. So we had a great, real, I would like to say, so practical seminar, not a lot of those blah blah talks. Sorry guys, right? You know, practical interviews. Joe grabbed his dish and just was going around with a coffee and couldn't have a break because there were a lot of questions and so on. Soon we will arrange something like that. Most likely it will be in April. Then we will provide additional information, and we will just be very happy to have this very practical seminar. But details will follow, I don't know, in upcoming month or two. Thanks.
Thank you, Rainis. Joe?
I don't have much to add. I think I would repeat what I said, which this is a fantastic and practical example of what cooperation in the region can achieve. And I think we believe that over the last 18 months to almost 2 years, actually, since we met in Riga in February 2020, seems like a lifetime ago, the fund has very effectively demonstrated that it can deploy capital, it can deliver infrastructure, and it can play a role in the future development of the region, both directly and by encouraging other private investment in the region. So that's my final statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Ulla, do you have to say finally?
Yeah, I would just say that getting the investment is not the win, making it profitable, long-lasting business. That's the goal.
Thank you. It was very brief, very Estonian brief. Ian?
Thank you. You know, I guess I'll just reiterate a little bit what I said. This is a geopolitically and geoeconomically significant initiative. It is a bold initiative. It is a Central European launched and led initiative that's brought to the table a fundamentally new and innovative approach to cross-border regional development. And I think it's going to be successful and it's going to be mirrored elsewhere. And above all, demonstrated by my colleagues here, it's an operational initiative. It's moved from theory, it's having impact, it's making investment, it's moving money, it's making profit. If I had to look forward for this year, some of the goals that I would suggest for the 3Cs community to include is, let's get that secretariat up and running. Let's move this initiative in the next level of the game. Let's work together to help the United States effectuate its commitment to invest in the 3Cs fund and get that complemented by some West Europeans and maybe even the EU, the European Commission. That would really help, I think, open the doors and make it even easier and even more attractive to private capital finance, to direct itself to the 3Cs fund and to the region. And then let me thank you and the AmCham for hosting this event. And if I could be so bold, encourage you to host more of these events in the run-up to the 3Cs Summit and Business Forum in Riga, and to encourage the AmChams, not just in Central 3Cs region, but in Western Europe, in Asia, and the Middle East, to do the same. Let's get the word out about 3Cs. Let's highlight the opportunity that this region offers.
Thank you, Ian. Ambassador Bonders?
Yeah, I also would like to thank AmCham for this really inspiring and wonderful event, and colleagues for participation. I just would like to express my wish that all events in Riga, which will be under the umbrella of 3Cs initiative, will be successful, and that it will give new opportunities, not only for business people, not only for investors or entrepreneurs, but also for parliamentarians and also civil society that could bring together more people's hearts and minds within 3Cs initiative region. Thank you.
Thank you. And with this, I would like to thank all the panelists for the engaging discussion. I would like also to thank the quite impressive audience we have enjoyed today online. And Liga, now the floor goes back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eva, for doing a really masterful job moderating this highly relevant discussion for all of us. And on behalf of AmCham, thank you to our distinguished panel for a really very, very insightful discussion, and all our members and partners and friends for watching. We look forward to engaging with our members on this topic going forward. So please feel free to send us your feedback about this discussion, and also comments and questions that can help us shape future discussions about the 3Cs initiative. So thank you very much, and see you at the 3Cs Summit in Riga. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
See you in June.
All the